What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021, and we've got a lot to talk about today here, so let's get right on into it. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and we're going to go back to our normal format. I'm going to do news for about an hour, then we're going to open up the phones and take phone calls for another hour after that. So a lot of people still talking about yesterday's terrible shooting. Apparently, this gun jumped off a shelf and shot someone, and they've arrested the gun and thrown it in jail here. Of course, that's not what really is going on, but we're going to see the leftists out there, gun grabbing and so forth and so on. If they were thinking this is going to be another chance to scream white supremacists and racism, that story kind of went away, because the shooting suspect is a 21-year-old Syrian immigrant named Ahmed al-Aliwi Alisa. And the police are still collecting statements from what's going on. But he's anti-Trump, he's pro-Islam, and so there really isn't a lot for the Democrats, the gun grabbers, to grab onto in terms of other agendas here. And it's kind of interesting. 8 people killed in Atlanta, and the Democrats blame anti-Asian racism. A guy named Ahmed al-Aliwi Alisi kills 10 people in a grocery store. They're not even questioning what his motive was. Not a single word about that yet. Of course, the big problem here wasn't the one man with the gun. It was those 10 others who did not have one to return fire. And around here in Indiana, it's a very gun-friendly state, and there's a local retailer we do business with, and it's not unusual to see people in there with a gun on their hip. And as far as I've been able to tell, there has never been a mass shooting in this place of business. There's never even been a robbery. There's been some shoplifting, but that's about the extent of it here. So, a tragic loss of life, including one hero police officer, and we're getting 2 different stories about what the weapon was used. One person said it was a patrol rifle. I don't know what that means. One senior law enforcement officer, senior law enforcement source, told CNN the weapon was an AR-15 style rifle. And that makes me very suspicious that, like Columbine not too long ago, this is a staged event by the gun grabbers to build a case for banning assault rifles. Story coming on out of dailyposter.com. The Boulder Massacre followed the NRA victory over the city, because last week the National Rifle Association publicly celebrated its success in striking down an assault weapons ban in Boulder, Colorado. And then, of course, 5 days later, they have a mass shooting involving an assault weapon. The timing is just too cute. And again, it's a repeat of what we saw at Columbine, where that happened just after the gun laws were loosened there in Colorado. So, again, they're pushing that this was an AR-15 style rifle, although somebody else said it was an AK-47. Interestingly enough, there's a videotape that we linked to the front page of whatreallyhappened.com, where a witness to the shooting describes hearing 2 distinctly different guns being used. That implies that there were 2 shooters, unless our one shooter was carrying 2 of these very, very large guns. And if there was, in fact, an assault weapon ban in the city of Boulder, how did this guy get this gun so quickly in order to go on his rampage? And again, no motive whatsoever. Meanwhile, over at Facebook, they're scrambling to hide his profile. He had a Facebook page, and they discovered that he was anti-Trump and pro-Islam, and so they're trying to basically make that go away before people start looking at it and say, well, obviously, we cannot draw the same conclusions from Boulder, Colorado that we did from Atlanta, Georgia. But that's not going to stop the gun grabbers, because Joe Biden is already out there calling for disarming Americans after the mass shooting by a Muslim immigrant. Okay? And Joe Biden is calling for an assault weapons ban, and they want to pass the background checks in the wake of the Colorado shooting. Now, I have to be honest. I'm not as opposed to the background checks as I am to the weapons ban. It's very easy to explain how this works. We know that drunk drivers kill more Americans every year than are killed with assault rifles. And yet every time there's a drunk driver that goes on out and kills somebody, nobody says, let's take cars away from all the law-abiding American people. They go after the individual who did the crime, and they put them away in prison as they richly deserve here. And every time we have a Muslim commit an act of terror, we're told, please don't blame all Muslims for it. And wouldn't it be nice if the gun owners got the same courtesy? But no, every time there's a shooting anywhere in this country, every single law-abiding gun owner is expected to accept the blame. Well, I certainly don't. Not that I have any guns anymore. But the principle is definitely there. Now, speaking of Atlanta, investigators are looking at electronic devices and conducting interviews and door cameras and whatever. They're saying there is still no evidence whatsoever of a hate crime involved in those spa killings. Now, remember the shooter? They got that shooter alive, and he said he was a sex addict, and these massage parlors were tempting him to indulge in his addiction. And again, a terrible way to handle that problem. But all this talk about white supremacy and anti-Asian racism was completely manufactured out of thin air. Never let a crisis go to waste, and everybody's piling on board. But they're doing it so heavy-handed and openly that people are picking up on it. They picked up on the attempt to convert Atlanta into a racist attack. They're picking up on the Boulder attack being morphed into condemning all gun owners. And it's the way this government and the corporate media operate. Speaking of which, a federal judge, Lawrence Silberman, he's a conservative U.S. Circuit judge, is out there saying that the corporate legacy media represents a threat to viable democracy. And he made these remarks in a dissent on a defamation case. He called the New York Times, Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal news section, NPR, most network and cable news outlets, Democratic Party broadsheets. And he said one-party control of the press and media is a threat to democracy, and he is absolutely correct about that. Speaking of the corporate media flogging a dead horse until you can't recognize it anymore, Russiagate has been brought back to the corporate media. The latest U.S. intelligence assessment this week is seeking to prepare the way for more sanctions against Russia and Iran while providing political cover for Joe Biden. And this highly politicized, unclassified report was reprinted without any skepticism by the corporate media, playing its dutiful role of passing this information on to the American public without any question whatsoever, that being their job. Over at CNN, their ratings are in free fall. And this is basically the fulfillment of a prophecy made by Donald Trump back in 2017, where he predicted that all forms of media will tank as soon as he left office. He said, because without me, their ratings are going down the tubes, and that is what is happening. And it's not just CNN, it's the other corporate media. Without Donald Trump to kick around, they really don't have much of anything else going on out there that the American people want to listen to or see. And it's good. It's a good thing for those big corporate media titans to come down. I want to see the social media titans come down, and I want to go back to a more peer-to-peer reporting of the news, which was one of the strong parts of the internet and the World Wide Web, to keep people fully informed so that they can make good choices. Over at the Supreme Court yesterday, they rejected Facebook's appeal to scale back a $15 billion lawsuit that accuses the tech giant of illegally tracking its users' internet activities. And the lawsuit alleges Facebook violated the Wiretap Act by tracking users' online activities that utilize features such as the platform's like button without their consent between April 2010 and September 2011. The plaintiffs argued that the company used plugins and cookies to collect data on users before selling it to advertisers. And yes, they're right. It is a violation of the wiretap law. Speaking of the Supreme Court, they are getting ready to hear the government's appeal to reinstate the death sentence for the Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. And the appeal filed under the Trump administration, which carried out the executions of 13 inmates in its final 6 months in office, challenged a lower court's decision ordering a new trial over the sentence Tsarnaev should receive for the death penalty eligible crimes for which he was convicted. Now, if you've read my website today, you will see a graphic I put up there that was made back when the Boston Marathon bombing occurred in 2013, which basically, to my mind, establishes a reasonable doubt that the Tsarnaevs were anything more than patsies for a staged government anti-gun stunt, operation, propaganda move. And if you look at the lawyer Tsarnaev had, I mean, talk about the worst defense lawyer in the world, literally walked into the courtroom and told the juror, he did it. That's it. He did it. Now we're just going to decide if he dies or not. Okay, GOP lawmakers are now looking at new legislation that would expose foreign money pouring into U.S. think tanks. Now, those think tanks are used to set national policy. And if foreign money is coming on in, then foreign governments are influencing U.S. foreign policy. We know there's one government that loves to influence U.S. foreign policy, and this bill may start laying open that machination, if you will, here. Over at the Heritage Foundation, Kay Coles James, who's president of the Heritage Foundation, which is a think tank, is resigning from her position. She announced that yesterday. News of the resignation was reported by Real Clear Politics White House reporter Philip Melanchthon Wegman. And she said, leading an organization that has contributed so much to the policy dialogue in this country and educated so many individuals across the globe has been the honor of a lifetime, James wrote in a letter to friends and family obtained by Wegman. Now, this raises the possibility, is the Heritage Foundation one of those think tanks that is about to be exposed as being under foreign influence? That would certainly be a very good reason to resign at this point. Okay. About COVID-19. Yesterday, we reported a story, and I labeled it as part of the propaganda war, regarding the AstraZeneca vaccine. And now there's a big stink being kicked up over at hideoutnow.com. They're reporting that U.S. health chiefs have accused AstraZeneca of sending outdated information as part of an application to get their vaccine approved for use on Americans. This is the data which claimed the shot was 79% effective. And now, of course, these health officials are raising concern over the fact that they're getting what, for all intents and purposes, is inaccurate, if not totally bogus data from AstraZeneca. And they're slamming AstraZeneca for releasing incomplete trial data. In other words, there may have been some negative consequences from the vaccine, and we are not being told about it because, gosh darn it, that would definitely cut into the profits here. Up in Concord, New Hampshire, which is where I spent my childhood, the Concord School District has canceled school as of yesterday after a flood of teachers and other staffers called in sick one day after many received the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. Parents in the SAU 8 district received phone calls, emails, and text messages notifying them there would be no school just before 6:30 a.m. The alert stated it was due to the level of teacher absenteeism across the district. The decision was made as principals began fielding calls from educators early on Monday that they were sick. Now, of course, the Johnson & Johnson shot is what Claire and I got. Claire has had no reaction to it whatsoever. I did have one day of being rather ill and in a grouchy mood. Claire will tell you I was grouchy, so grouchy. Don't make me grouchy. You wouldn't like me if I was grouchy. Over in the Philippines, they have now approved the Russian Sputnik V vaccine, and it's approved for use in the Philippines, which makes it the 52nd country to give the green light to the Russian COVID-19 vaccine. And so they're doing very well getting their vaccine exported to the rest of the world. Story coming on out of Press TV. Fierce COVID shot resistance could derail mass vaccination in the U.S. And it starts out saying that many Americans remain deeply skeptical about the COVID-19 vaccines, threatening to derail a national vaccination program that aims to contain the virus that we've all been told is out there waiting to just attack us if we let it. This next story really annoyed me, and it probably will. A government scientist, Dr. Mary Ramsey, claimed on Sunday that social distancing and wearing masks could last for years. Okay, Dr. Ramsey, no way. I'm ready to throw these masks away, and I realize I don't wear one on the show. Do I have one around here? No, I don't. Here, we'll try this. There's my face mask. Okay, so, all right. Anyway, so they're out there still pushing, buy the face masks, spend money, get the vaccines. The other side, of course, is the Burn Your Masks movement. This is a massive anti-lockdown protest raging worldwide. And they're saying thousands and possibly tens of thousands of protesters across Europe marched on Saturday against continued government lockdowns. Protesters hit the streets in London, Germany, France, Sweden, the Netherlands, Australia, Belgium, Japan, Vienna, and elsewhere in what was called a worldwide rally for freedom. And especially when you look at all the scientific evidence that's coming out saying the masks don't really work anyway. My favorite mask, one that I wear all over the place, is if pants can't stop a fart, do you really believe this mask will stop a virus? And everybody gets a laugh out of that. Even my doctor got a laugh out of that one. Over at the CDC, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, director of the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, said yesterday she's worried the U.S. could see another avoidable surge of COVID-19 if mitigation measures such as mask wearing, physical distancing, avoiding crowds and travel are not followed. So they're keeping up the booga-booga. Spend your money, buy masks, buy vaccines, just go on out and keep the profits flowing to the medical industrial complex. And I know I sound cynical, but no matter how cynical I get, I just can't keep up. Story out of Breitbart over in Merkel's Germany. They have hit what they are describing as the emergency brake. They're going to extend and tighten their lockdown restrictions, and they're already dealing with protests in the street over all of this. So Merkel and the country's 16 state governors who are responsible for imposing and lifting restrictions are holding a video conference nearly 3 weeks after they agreed a several-step plan paving the way to relax some rules, and it looks like now that is not going to happen. Meanwhile, down in Miami, you've probably been hearing about all the ruckus going on down there. Miami Beach issued a state of emergency and shut it down, curfews, because of the crowds, and they're saying because of COVID. But there was a video over on Twitter, and we linked to it, and we put it under the title, Meanwhile Down in Miami, showing just the absolute fighting and brawling that is going on. In particular, one restaurant that was hit by these massive fights twice in a row, over 2 days period. So, yeah, it's and I think part of it might be that these kids have been held down in lockdown so much, once they're let go, they tend to go a little bit crazy. That's just human nature. Turning to the international news, Russia is still saying that the U.S. refusal of Biden-Putin talks is a missed opportunity, and I can almost see Putin laughing quietly to himself, and they're expressing disappointment to the White House's rejection of an offer from Putin to hold live, unscripted talks with President Biden. We have to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back with more news after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about the international news here, and there's an article out of uns.com. Does Europe stand with Biden against Russia? Now, the focus of this article, they start out where, Biden is accusing Putin of being a killer, and do Europe's politicians agree? And the article says, well, apparently yes, and they go on talking about how Prime Minister Boris Johnson has pronounced Russia Britain's top security challenge. It basically is pushing for the armaments and nuclear weapons industry and just really pouring more and more money into the British military. But even if they put their entire gross domestic product into the military, they would still not be a match for Russia. But what I think may actually be going on is I think the European countries understand that there's going to be a war between Russia and the United States, and sadly, it, like the first two world wars, is going to be fought on their soil, and they're trying to get ready for that. Over in Myanmar, dozens of Chinese-owned factories have been torched by protesters. Myanmar's chief of police, Than Hiang, said its Bureau of Special Operations Commander, Lieutenant General Aung So, along with 2 Army units, will be hit with U.S. sanctions for being responsible or complicit in or having directly or indirectly engaged or attempted to engage in actions or policies that prohibit, limit, or penalize the exercise of freedom of expression by the people of Burma. Okay. So here a sanction, there a sanction. Saudi Arabia has bombed a major grain port in Yemen, and they hit the capital Sana'a, Marib province, and the Red Sea port of Salif. Now, according to the Houthis al-Masara, the bombing in Salif killed at least one of the grain company's workers and injured 6 more. Salif lies to the northwest of Hodeidah and is inside the UN-brokered neutral zone as per a deal signed in Stockholm back in 2018. But violations of the Stockholm Agreement are a regular occurrence. And, of course, attacking the food supply on which the civilians depend, I think, qualifies as a war crime. Over in Israel, the Jewish National Fund has now gone public admitting that it is financially aiding the illegal settlers who are grabbing land over in the West Bank away from the Palestinians. Now, for decades, the Jewish National Fund has had this image of charitable work buying and managing land in Israel, and they raise a lot of money on that. But apparently they have now decided to unmask their real purpose, and they're basically saying they allocate funds to expand Israel's illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank. Meanwhile, over in Gaza, only 4% of households have access to safe drinking water. And the West Bank study shows that 66% of households have access to safe water there. The daily allocation per capita from consumed water is less than the internationally recommended rate, and it is decreasing. Israel's just slowly turning that valve shut bit by painful bit. The day before the new Israeli elections, personal details of all Israeli voters were leaked online, possibly as a means of putting pressure on them to go with the status quo. It's going to be at least Friday before we get results from the Israeli elections, and I imagine that they're going to have so much election fraud, it's going to make last November look like a minor inconvenience. Because Netanyahu is desperate to hang on to power. He's looking at corruption charges when he leaves office, and we'll see what's going to happen there, but it could be rather amazing. Do you remember Jonathan Pollard? You probably do if you're my age. He's the American who served a 30-year sentence for spying for Israel, and he's finally given an interview since arriving in Israel last year after his parole expired. And he said America had stabbed Israel in the back by withholding intelligence from its ally. Well, that is something that just happens as a matter of course among all nations. There are some things they'll share and some things they won't share, but this was his rationale, and also, I might add, his defense for stealing U.S. nuclear targeting secrets and selling them to Israel. Israel then turned around and traded them to the former Soviet Union for increased immigration quotas. So Pollard is back in Israel, and he's being treated like a hero over there. The U.S. government, through the U.S. Air Force Research Laboratory in conjunction with DARPA, spent $5.2 billion mounting high-energy lasers to aircraft. The Boeing YAL-1 airborne laser uses high-energy laser beams to superheat and destroy targets. And so they're really getting up there, and they've been planning this for a while. $5.2 billion on that one. Speaking of billions, you know, billion here, a billion there. Soon you're talking some real money. The upgrade cost overruns for the F-35 fighter have run into the billions of dollars and slowed it down even more. It is now at risk for meeting its deadlines. So when they say upgrade to the F-35, what I think they mean is fixing all the problems that were designed into the thing. So it's a lot of money. The price for modernization, $14.4 billion. We'll be right back. President Joe Biden is pursuing an ambitious $3 trillion with a T dollar spending package on green infrastructure and other priorities. He's going to fund it by going after Americans making more than $400,000 a year, targeting estates and raising capital gains on wealthy individuals and corporations. Good luck getting that one through the Congress with all of those congressmen actually dependent on wealthy individuals and corporations for their campaign donations for the next election. Over at Goldman Sachs, the CEO has responded to this recent whistleblower, if you will. Basically, junior analysts making $91,000 complained of working 100-hour weeks under inhumane conditions. And so the CEA is responding by saying that he's going to try and get them Saturdays off. So they get a little bit more time to go home before they come on back and start gouging the heck out of the American economy. Two of North America's largest railroad companies announced a merger Sunday that would connect freight customers to Canada, the United States, and Mexico on a single network for the first time in history. Canadian Pacific agreed to purchase Kansas City Southern in a deal worth $25 billion after discounting $3.8 billion of Kansas City Southern debt that Canadian Pacific will take on. It would combine two of the industry's fastest growing rail companies at a time when online purchases have soared, overwhelming ports and delaying shipments. So that's one place where we're going to need to make sure the infrastructure is up there, is those rail lines here. Okay, story coming out of Investment Watch Blog, actually just posing a question. Are we about to reach America's let them eat cake moment? It's talking about the flaunting of wealth and the ever increasing wealth inequality that we have in this country. Meanwhile, story coming out of Zero Hedge, studies are showing that the richest 1% of Americans are hiding an average of 20% of their income from the Internal Revenue Service. And so this report concludes that U.S. tax evasion is far more widespread than previously estimated. I would imagine, however widespread it is, would be a carefully guarded secret, because if everybody's doing it, everybody will be doing it. Over in the automobile industry, they are really being hit by the shortage of semiconductors around the globe, and apparently there's been yet another fire in a semiconductor factory, which is going to tighten up the supply even more. But some of America's top-selling motor vehicles are being made without computer components in 2021. Ford Motor Company is holding Ford 150 pickup trucks in the factories as long as possible as they wait on computer chips to become available. Well, there's a business opportunity for an American company, if you ask me. The new trucks will not arrive at the dealerships on schedule due to the worldwide shortage of semiconductors. New vehicles are made with multiple chips. These chips are incorporated into many aspects of the vehicle, from the power steering to the brake sensors to battery systems, entertainment systems, and backup cameras. As the industry transitions to more electric vehicles, more chips will be needed to make the vehicles work. In the realm of electric vehicles, Volkswagen is now using more cobalt than Tesla is for their batteries. And, pardon me, in 2020, a total of 18,750 tons of cobalt were consumed in the batteries of newly sold passenger electric vehicles globally. This was 29% increase over last year. This according to a report by Adamas Intelligence. According to the market analysts, the increase in cobalt use was the result of a surge in passenger electric vehicle sales in the second half of the year, particularly in China and Europe. And I hope somebody somewhere is going to think of a way to be able to go on out and recycle those batteries and recover the cobalt from them. Some way that will pencil on out as opposed to simply, dealing with shortages down the road. Let's get down to immigration and borders and so forth. Apparently, Mayorkas is claiming our border is now closed. Now, we reported yesterday that the Department of Homeland Security said the border was closed, but those illegal immigrants already inside were going to be allowed to stay. So this article is poking fun at the claims the border is closed, saying, right, President Biden regularly works out on a stair climber. Meanwhile, Representative Michael McCall predicts 1 million illegal border crossings by summer. And they are definitely pouring on in. In February, human traffickers made up to $14 million per day during the rush to the border. Trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar industry, according to the Tucson Border Patrol Chief Roy Villarreal, who had been with the agency for 30 years. So thanks a lot, Joe. And speaking of Joe Biden, article coming on out from the Political Insider, Joe Biden appears to be backtracking on his immigration policy. And when asked by a reporter Sunday about what could be done about the chaos at the southern border, Biden had a very interesting reply. He said, we could do a lot more. We're in the process of doing it now, including making sure that we reestablish what existed before, which was they can stay in place and make their case from their home country. In other words, he's going back to the Trump method. He's reestablishing Trump-era border policy. What a huge embarrassment that is for him and for the liberals in general. Over in Chicago, in the suburb of Evanston, they are approving America's first reparations program for black residents whose descendants, I think they meant ancestors in this headline, lived in the city between 1919 and 1969 and experienced housing discrimination. $10 million will be paid out using marijuana taxes. Let's see, where did this come from? This came from Women's Systems, and they botched the difference between ancestors and descendants. Interesting. Got to be careful. I've seen some whoppers even in the big corporate media. Okay, getting into science and technology news here. AT&T is out there whining about the new California net neutrality law as the ISP's case appears doomed. The broadband industry is attempting to kill California's net neutrality law and now appears to have very little chance of succeeding in the U.S. District Court where the case is being heard. On February 23rd, the industry's motion for a preliminary injunction was denied by Judge John Mendez of the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of California. And apparently he did not issue a written ruling, but simply said, no, injunction denied. And the denial of the injunction means that California can enforce its net neutrality law while the case continues. And it certainly seems to suggest Mendez could ultimately side with the broadband industry. So we'll see what happens with that. This is kind of a weird story, and this is in the realm of brain-machine interfaces, and we know that Elon Musk is getting into this technology as well. But according to Blacklisted News, scientists have come up with a way of reading the minds of monkeys using ultrasound. so they don't have to actually stick wires in or send harmful radiation through the brain. And they're beginning to experiment with primitive forms of the technology. They have to date been able to help a quadriplegic control an exoskeleton using electrode sensors implanted in his brain. Well, now they're trying to replace that with the ultrasound technique, and that will be interesting. That'll be a great thing for people who have lost limbs or lost nerves and things like that. We've got a friend of a friend who just lost a leg, and that would be good to have a prosthetic that was controlled by the brain. I think we mentioned this once before, but it came up again in the news feed. The Ulysses Group is a surveillance company, and it is claiming it can track nearly any car in real time. And they can access over 15 billion vehicle locations worldwide every month. The data can be viewed historically or in real time, and it should be used operationally by U.S. government agencies. So they're going to be able to type your name into a computer screen and show exactly where your car is, which is a good reason, for swapping cars every once in a while with your neighbor, just to keep them guessing here. We were talking about possible recycling of the cobalt in the batteries. There's other very expensive materials used in cars, and in particular the catalytic converters use platinum. And in Anaheim, California, there was a suspected auto parts thief was trying to steal a catalytic converter from a car when the jack gave out and the car fell on him, crushing him. So not such a good idea. Right, getting into the science news here. As if we didn't have enough to worry about. I mean, it's getting absolutely biblical here in this country. And so we're looking at this article. This came out of weather.com and a couple of other places as well. And they're talking about how after nearly 2 decades underground, trillions, with a T, of cicadas are going to emerge. They have spent 17 years underground, and now is the time they're going to pop on up, and it's going to be like, well, they're going to be just all over the place. So we've got that to worry about on top of everything else. I wonder if those COVID masks will protect us from the cicadas. If you are an astronomy junkie, like yours truly here, you might want to get out your telescope and look at the constellation of Cassiopeia, because there is a star near there that has just gone nova. It's visible in even a basic telescope. You can find exact coordinates online. It is brightening to the point where they're saying it might actually become naked eye visible. And they're saying it is easy to observe. So that's going to be a lot of fun there. Over at NASA, they have successfully tested the Space Launch System rocket core. They ran a hot fire test. It took 8 minutes, which is as long as they needed to run to get into orbit. And this is going to be used as part of the Artemis missions to return man and send the first woman back to the moon, and in the very, very near future. That'll be exciting. Okay. Up on Mars with Perseverance, the helicopter has completed its tests. They're getting ready to try the first flight, and it sort of runs like a drone. It's got internal gyros to keep it level, and because of the long delay for communications to reach from Earth to Mars and back, it can't be flown real time. So what they do is they program it. They pick a location where they want it to go, and the helicopter, which is named Ingenuity, flies off, does what it's told to do, and then comes on back to Perseverance. So they're getting ready to do that, and that's probably going to happen sometime in the next couple of weeks. And it'll be the first artificial flight, or any flight for that matter, on the planet Mars. Over in Tunisia, they have launched their first satellite into space yesterday from a launch site in Kazakhstan on board a Russian Soyuz 2 rocket. Now, the satellite was manufactured by the Tunisian telecommunications company Talnat and is specialized in the Internet of Things, according to the company's owner and general manager, Mohammed Freika. The Challenge 1 satellite was due to be launched on the 28th March, but was delayed after a surge in voltage was detected. But they got it up there, and it's working, and good for them. Absolutely good for them. Story coming on out of South Front, talking about the brand new space race is upon us, and I, for one, think that's a really good idea. There are two basic directions in the space race: who will reach Mars first and who will colonize the moon, because it is, after all, much closer. Resources need to be extracted, and the U.S. wants them to be available to it and its corporations. And the second aspect is who will be able to establish the most military and reconnaissance infrastructure in space to have the upper hand in harvesting resources. Well, better a space race than an arms race, if you ask me. And remember, the boom times that we had in the tech industries in the 70s, 80s, and 90s in this country were all born in the Apollo program to go to the moon. And so we bring that back. Think of all the new industries, products, and jobs that are going to be created from that. So anytime somebody says, why are we spending money to go to the moon? Why don't you just give it away to the poor? Well, poor, learn to code. Get a job with NASA. You'll get a lot more money that way anyway. A while back, we had an interstellar object whiz through the solar system. In fact, it wasn't even detected until it was already heading back on out to space. It was discovered by a Hawaiian observatory, and it was named Oumuamua, which is Hawaiian for scout. And it was originally postulated to be a very thin spindle-shaped object that was rotating or spinning around its long axis. And a lot of people are out there saying, oh, it's an alien spaceship, it's this, it's that. But they have gone back and looked at the data and figured out that it was actually a disk that just happened to be edge onto planet Earth, and it was spinning like an old phonograph record, and that accounted for the variations in albedo that led original observers to think that it was spinning when it was thought to be a long, skinny object. So it's this pancake-shaped chunk, and they're saying it probably is from a Pluto-like exoplanet that left its home 400 million years ago. And fascinating object. Now they're going to be looking for more of these interstellar objects coming in. It's like on Jupiter, when comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 plowed into the atmosphere and left all those scorch marks there, and they said, wow, what a rare occurrence. And then people kept looking at Jupiter, and they kept seeing more and more of those scorch marks, and came to realize that Jupiter gets hit with asteroids and comets all the time. Interestingly enough, there is a new satellite that has been launched into space. It's called ELSA-D. It's made by the Japanese firm Astroscale, and it launched last Saturday. It uses magnets to clean up space junk. There is something like 9,200 tons of debris up there in orbit, which represents a threat to the growing spacecraft and the orbital commerce, as it were. I think there's even still a glove from the Gemini missions up there. We're going to be back after these few words. Talking about science and technology news here as we head to the top of the hour, and Russia's Samara University has said that its Pioneer ultra-light optics for nanosatellites will be sent to space for testing. Now, what do they mean by that? Well, most optics used in spacecraft tend to be rather large. They tend to be very, very heavy. Think Hubble Space Telescope, think keyhole satellites, Voyager camera, and so forth. And then think about how big the lenses were on the old digital single-lens reflex cameras and how small they have been brought down for your smartphones, which take excellent pictures. Well, they've basically applied the same principle to come up with these extremely small optical systems for these nano satellites, and they're going to be tested aboard Russian nanosatellites Cube SX HSE and Cube SX Sirius HSE. So they're saying that cheaper nanosatellites with compact optics make it possible to create large-scale orbital constellations from hundreds of such satellites to ensure monitoring of Earth in near real time. and obtain an image of any spot on Earth's surface without waiting for a large remote sensing satellite to fly over the right place, which can be a bit of an issue. Needless to say, there is a very obvious military application for that technology. Over in the United Arab Emirates, they're developing cloud-shocking drones in an attempt to artificially boost rainfall. And it seems every year tech developers and researchers come up with some new unexpected application for unmanned aerial vehicles, bringing humanity closer to some future dystopian Skynet scenario where robots are ruling the skies overhead. Maybe, maybe not. Depends on the programming here. But what they're going to do at the UAE is they're going to have the drones basically fly up into the clouds and hover there and deliver electric shocks in the hope that it's going to stimulate rainfall. So we'll see what's going to happen with that. Interesting technique if that works. Toyota is sounding a warning about electrifying all automobiles. And they're basically saying that, you know, the materials needed to make them are in short supply, as we've already said, you know, with the Cobalt. There are two other issues, and one is that we don't have, as a world, as a country, the electrical generation capacity to throw millions of rechargeable cars onto the power grid every single night. The other problem is that when you look at the way oil is refined, gasoline is still going to be produced by those refineries. And what are they going to do with it? Set it on fire and let it, you know, burn up to the air the way they do the methane. So, you know, maybe the gas-electric hybrid is really the better way to go, and I tend to think that it is. Story coming on out of naturalnews.com. They're very worried about fish. Oh, there's the music. Okay, well, we'll leave this one up. We're going to open the phone lines, area code 512-248-8252, and we'll be right back after station identification. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, area code 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Dirk in Las Vegas. Hello, Dirk. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. How are you? First, real quick, I just want to say I really enjoy some of your callers like Tom and Kevin, and especially Peter. He's absolutely right that there's a group that is intentionally trying to subvert our freedom. But I thought I might mention, I found a couple videos out here, and by some miracle, they're still out on YouTube. And this Professor Edward Dutton, the Jolly Heretic, have you ever heard of this guy?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, he's really good, and he's got a couple of very insightful videos that he produced here. One's entitled "Why Virtue Signalers Are Psychopaths."
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
He has another one that "Why Liberals' Bodies Literally Reward Them for trying to destroy humanity," and it's really learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people would be well served to watch some of those. And I also saw a video here. This outfit's called Theremin Trees, and this video is called Bending Truth, How Adults Get Indoctrinated. And, you know, I think people, it would be helpful for us to understand how we've gotten to this place, you know,
Mm-hmm.
how they've hacked into our standard human behavior, you know, and especially with these issues of immigration,
Yes.
You know, and the natural, you know, naturally people want to keep outsiders outside, you know, and they've totally hacked it. So it's amazing how they manipulated people's beliefs. And anyways, thank you very much for your time, sir. I enjoy your show.
Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to go to Robert in Kansas. Hello, Robert. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. I wanted to talk about the idea that math is racist.
Yes.
And this is the situation is such that the controllers attach negative terms to critical truths that they do not want the people knowing.
Yes.
They don't want us to know what is real. So it reminds me of the situation. I'm a combat veteran, and we had a debriefing after getting back from Iraq, and we talked about women in combat roles. And I stood up and was saying, women should not, they don't belong in these fighting roles. They're not made for that. It's not just physical, it's mental too. And I was called a sexist for saying these things.
Yes.
When in reality, I was called this term, a sexist, which is negative, but everything I said was absolutely true. And the same thing applies to this math is racist situation where they can't say that certain people, okay, I'll just say it, like black people can't do mathematics at the same level that, let's say, a white group or an Asian group could do it at. They can't say that, so they have to say that it is racist instead of just saying what is true, that certain groups excel here and they don't here. So that's really what it is. They want to deny us what is real, so
Yes.
they have to attach these negative terms so that we
Yes.
don't know what is actually true. Okay.
It's a conspiracy theory.
I guess so, Michael. But yeah, it's pretty crazy that we're being told that math is racist and determining any sort of truth is somehow wrong now. So
Yes.
yeah, it's an amazing thing. But I heard yesterday's show, and I just wanted to comment on that and let you know that they just want to hide the truth from us, and they have to attach this term to it that, oh, you're bad if you actually admit what is true. So
Yes.
that's all it is, Mike. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks
Okay.
an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to go to Bruce in Texas. Hello, Bruce. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. First of all, yesterday, did you say that you worked on Star Trek, the motion picture?
Yes.
You did?
Yep.
Oh, wow. What did you do? Can you get into it just real quickly?
Well, I was part of the visual effects crew. They had two different visual effects crews working on it. And I think the one thing I did that really stands on out is I'm the guy who designed the new look for the transporter for that movie.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, your work is immortalized.
I wish I was.
Yeah. I was in school, maybe a freshman in high school, but I went to one of the first Star Trek conventions, and I signed a petition for them to create the motion picture, so I helped you get that job.
Well, thank you. Your check is in the mail.
My check is in the mail. By the way, that movie is actually about transhumanism.
Yes.
Just putting it out there.
Well, let me share a little story with you, because once they decided they were going to do the movie, the Paramount executives figured they already had the Trekkie audience, and so they wanted to increase the film's general appeal. And so they basically wanted to take out all of the qualities that made the original Star Trek TV series interesting, which was, borderline controversial thing, TV's first interracial kiss, and various other things like that. The fact that the Enterprise crew would not smoke, which back then everybody smoked on every TV show except for Star Trek. And they had this wonderful script come on in where the Enterprise meets the god Quetzalcoatl coming back in fulfillment of prophecy. And, of course, Quetzalcoatl is an advanced technological being. And the Paramount executives said, oh, that's too shocking. We'll offend all the Christians with that. We can't go with that. And so the author walked across the lot to the Saturday morning animated Star Trek. They bought the script, and it won a Hugo Award.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yep.
I just watched every day they show the remastered version of the original series, and they had the episode Mirror, Mirror. I think that was the best acting of all the hallmark of the show, because they all had to play evil characters in the alternate universe.
Yes, they did.
It was really interesting. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Anyhow, sorry to bore everybody. This shooter in Colorado, he's a Muslim, and he's been brought here from Syria. So
Yep.
I wonder who's responsible for bringing him here. How did he get a gun? Is he already a citizen, or did he get it illegally? And this is a hate crime against white people, isn't it? I mean, a young white girl was shot, and a police officer, in a predominantly white neighborhood. This is Where's the cries for a hate crime, and where's his Facebook page, and where's his phone material at?
You're not going to see that because, after all, hate crimes are only committed by white people against everyone else, and you have this Syrian Muslim coming on in, and you're right. It's a question in a city that had a ban on assault weapons. Where did he get this? Was it provided to him? According to his brother, the guy was very paranoid, and he strikes me as exactly the sort of individual that would be recruited for a false flag operation by, for example, the FBI.
Yeah. You say that there's a clip of multiple shooters and multiple firearms going off?
There is a clip of a witness.
On your website.
There's a clip of a witness that says that he heard two distinctly different weapons being used.
Right. If you, and it's on the YouTube under the Associated Press, the raw shooting, the raw footage of the Las Vegas shooting, and you can clearly hear two separate fully automatic weapons going off.
Yes.
And they're actually fired in a military fashion. We call them barking machine guns, or talking machine guns, where one would fire and then the other one would fire. So many such cases. Okay, I'll let you go. Is there even a White Lives Matter movement, or would that be called racist?
Well, I don't know. Yes, it'll be called racist. I mean, when blacks are active, getting out there and being activists, is called black power. When Hispanics are out there fighting for their rights, it's called brown power. When white people stand up for recognition, it's called racism.
Man, okay, I'm speechless. Okay. I'll let you go.
All right, thanks. We're going to go to Jeff in St. Paul. Hello, Jeff. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, hi. It's been a while. Okay, so here I was listening to the show, and they're talking about, they want to turn the whole world into electric cars, right?
Yes.
And that means every other country in the world will have to be mined for minerals for batteries, right?
Correct, unless a new technology is discovered.
They call it a pilot project, or to see if it's feasible. They said even on a small scale, they used up all the water in the whole area. And so it's not sustainable, but I'm sure they'll do it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I missed the part about they did what where they used up all the water?
Well, they went to these countries to do test mining for minerals to make the future batteries for cars. And on a small scale, the mining took up all the water in the whole area.
Yeah, it can be a problem. Yes.
So anyway, well, appreciate listening to your show. Take care.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to go to Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, what's coming to mind right now mostly is this shooting. And, I waited to make up, to get more facts and all that. And this is what I've come down to. This guy, it turns out now, first I found out that he was a Muslim, was on InfoWars. But what InfoWars didn't even cover was the fact that this guy comes, not only, they said he came from Syria, but what they forgot to mention is that the people who moved away from Syria very fast, the so-called refugees leaving Syria at the time, were enemies of President Assad.
Yes.
And many of them were actually Al-Qaeda, ISIS. Well, later on, they changed their name to, some of the to ISIS, and Al something or another. I can't pronounce the name. Al-Jabbar, something like that. But anyway, these people, it was not all the same. These were basically radical Muslims.
Yes.
And they were supplied by the CIA, the Mossad, and probably British MI6, because even now they're desperately trying to overthrow President Assad there in Syria. Mm-hmm. So a number of these people came over not only to the United States, but to Europe. And you've got to figure something. You've got to figure the CIA and the FBI still had some kind of control over this guy, all right? And the fact that the FBI was on the scene almost immediately, which is kind of right with the police, and I didn't even know about the semi-automatic weapons ban that they had in Boulder. I didn't realize that, but now it's starting to make sense. Yeah, it sounds to me like, again, this was in all intents and purpose an FBI agent, all right, being used to commit terror and make it look like, trying to come after weapons and all that. I guess the FBI wasn't able to get an actual white so-called supremacist, that type of person to conduct something like this.
Well, they're actually an endangered species. They're hard to find.
Yeah. So they went. Well, and also I think people are getting a lot smarter. That they know, they'll know what an FBI agent, coming to recruit them would look like and act like. And but so they went back to an oldie but goodie and went to a radical Muslim, so-called radical Muslim. Okay. And at one time, I would have started jumping. Oh man, these Muslims, they gotta go. We shouldn't have them in the country. It's not Muslims, Mike. It's a certain brand. It's a certain radical brand of Islam.
Yes.
Much of it is not even organic to Islam itself, but is actually created by the West, the intelligence agency of the West, to try to cause turmoil, like they're trying to do all over the world. Wherever you go, these NGOs and the CIA and the Mossad and the MI6, they're trying to create turmoil all over the world. It's connected with everything else going on, including the COVID garbage, including the vaccines, including the mask wearing. It's all connected, Mike. It's all connected to bring turmoil, get people to hate each other, and of course they want to come after those guns. They want desperately to come after the guns. But again, they're not going to see, now that the story is unraveling on them. American people aren't going to buy it. I don't think so. Because it was too late to take them off of social media because it already came, InfoWars showed it already. And I'm just adding the fact that I believe this clown was probably being manipulated by the FBI. Maybe even the CIA had the hooks in him somehow too. Basically,
I absolutely agree. I mean, you've got the fact that only the week before Boulder had ended its assault weapon ban. What does this guy use? An assault weapon. Then you have everybody saying, oh, it was definitely, an assault rifle. It was an AR-15 type rifle, although one person said it was an AK. But, I mean, this is just tailor-made, to push the gun grabber agenda. And so, I really do think this was set up by the gun grabbers. And they couldn't, as you say, they couldn't find a white supremacist to shoot up the market. And I noticed that they're not really talking about who the victims were or what their ethnicities were. And so, the discussion is already dragging away from gun control, to the war on terror. And that, of course, is not what the gun grabbers want.
Yeah, again, they decided to go back for an oldie but goodie. I guess if he had found, I guess there's not too many of those in that section of the country, but if he could have found a kosher market to shoot up, it would have even been better for their story,
Yes.
To push their dribble, about hate and this and that and all this stuff. But that's what it comes down to, Mike. We gotta wise up. And I think people are wising up.
Yes.
And realize what these demons are behind, who these demons are that are behind a lot of this stuff. And that's pretty much all I got to say today, Mike. Thanks.
All right, thanks an awful lot. The phone lines are open. Area code 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Miles in Maine. Hello, Miles. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, aloha, Michael. Yet we have another one of these shootings at one of these, kind of auspicious times with all this other stuff going on. And again, it's an assault-style rifle. I mean, you never see any of these shootings with a revolver or with a bolt-action rifle or even with, say, a 30-30, some of the most common firearms people have.
Yes.
And then, when you reflect back to that Parkland shooting, was that in Florida?
Yes.
I mean, this kid's got no money, and he's got every high-price, high-tech firearm just about you could imagine. And all the, all the accessories for it.
Yes.
So it's just, It's just really crazy, and I guess if it serves their purpose, that's what they're going to continue to do. But I just thought I'd mention it. I never see any of these with revolvers, bolt actions, 30-30s, nothing. It's always some kind of whatever it is, the flavor of the day that they're after and they're going to get rid of.
Absolutely.
You never saw a single, nobody ever saw, and only a handful of people ever even heard of this bump stock deal until this guy breaks loose, and the next thing you know, they're gonna ban it. So that's my comments, and I just want to hear what everyone else got to say, Michael. Thank you. Keep up the great shows.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot here. And again, the phone lines are open. Area code 512-248-8252. And we're going to go in and do some news before the next commercial break, which is coming up. We started this show before we hit the top of the hour, and they're talking about marine plastic pollution. It's a major problem all over the world. And new research is showing fish are eating plastic at higher rates than before, even species that are threatened or near threatened. And of course, if you eat the fish, you're going to eat that plastic as well. So that is a serious, serious health problem and does need to be taken care of. Also, down in Florida, with the manatees, they've got a study that is finding glyphosate in more than half of all the manatees down there. And of course, glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup. It has been declared a probable human carcinogen by the World Health Organization. Massive lawsuits from people doing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which appears to be linked to glyphosate. So it's nasty stuff. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. Phone lines are open. Area code 512-248-8252, and we will be right back. Welcome back to our show, and again, a friendly reminder and a nudge in the ribs that Republic Broadcasting Network is in the middle of a perpetual fundraiser. We need your continued support so that we can go on speaking truth to power and keeping the American people fully informed so that they can make good choices. So once again, the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. If you mail in a donation of $100 or more, include your T-shirt size and a return address, and you will get one of these spiffy official RBN T-shirts and the bragging rights to go with it. And don't forget that the Front Sight Firearms promotion is still going on right now. All right, our phone lines now are completely open, 512-248-8252, so call on in. We got lots of time and lots of phone lines here. All right, do you remember Jack Phillips? He may be the world's most famous baker, certainly America's most famous baker, and people have taken him all the way to the Supreme Court to force him to bake them one of his custom cakes for a gay wedding, which he won't do because of his Christian beliefs here. And they keep doing this over and over. Now, Phillips owns Masterpiece Cake Shop in Lakewood, Colorado, and he holds traditional views on marriage. Now, here's the problem I have with this story. It is this kind of we're going to force you to accept us that is actually going to result in resentment against the gay community. Whatever happened to live and let live? Okay, if this guy doesn't want to do a cake for your gay wedding, find a baker who will. I'm sure there's one out there. There has to be one out there. I'm sure there are a lot of gays who own bake shops. But they keep coming back to pound on this guy over and over again, and it is going to build resentment against the gay community for this kind of behavior. All right, we're going to go to the phones here. John in California, welcome to the show. What is on your mind?
Yeah, good afternoon, Michael. This thing about math is racist.
Yes.
It reminds me of, even when I went to school, there are a lot of minorities, blacks, Hispanics, that are good in that. Now, maybe there may be a little more majority in that, especially in the ghetto areas of the big cities where they can't graduate, don't go to school. But I went to school. There's plenty of those, and I think they don't want to push those, especially in the history. They just had Black History Month in February, and they never talk about the African Americans that, brought themselves up, people like Booker T. Washington,
yes,
George Carver, and that. I read those in history. They never bring those out. They always talk about ex-slaves, and all these, radicals and all that they want to personify, but they just won't bring that up. So
no, they won't. They don't
know.
talk about all the black inventors out there. They don't talk about black medical researchers. You're all familiar with harpoons from whaling, the ones that have the little spinning latch hook on the end. That was invented by a black man. Yeah, maybe we do need to acknowledge more of the black contributions to society, but the people pushing this agenda that blacks are being oppressed, they're the ones hiding it. We saw the same thing back when the feminist movement was really cranking up. All they would talk about is women being oppressed and kept down and held down, and they wouldn't talk about people like, Marie Curie. Because that basically puts a lie to this idea that women are not allowed to scale top positions of power and recognition.
Yeah, that's like I said. People got to wake up and look at it, and it's in the thing. I know about it. I'm just concerned about today, my children, grandchildren, and what they're not going to learn from the past as we bring it up to them. Anyway, Michael, thank you for your time. Keep it up.
You're welcome. And yeah, our history is being erased right now. With all the monuments being taken down, there even talk about wanting to destroy Mount Rushmore, because if we don't have a history, if we don't have a past, then we don't have a guide with which to judge what's going to happen in the future. Okay, we have a caller waiting on the line, but we're coming up on another commercial break, so a little bit more news here. Vice President Kamala Harris is facing criticism for appearing to break with precedent and failing to salute the honor guard when boarding Air Force Two. Video reviewed by Fox News showed that her predecessors, Mike Pence and former Vice President Biden, regularly saluted the honor guard in the same situation, and I really do think that they should. It's just courtesy. It's a simple courtesy here. Looks like LG is trying to sell its mobile phone division. They're not getting a lot of interest from it. I guess they can't compete with iPhone and other major brands like Samsung here. Okay. All right, we're coming up on a commercial break. We have a caller waiting on the line. We have many lines open. Area code 512-248-8252, and we'll be right back. Back to our show here, and once again, the phone lines are open. Area code 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Brian in Chile. Hello, Brian. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, thank you for taking my call, Mike. And the reason I'm calling is because I smell a rat with regard to that Mars landing with the new rover.
Okay.
And the rat has to do with the drone. Now, Mike, the atmosphere on Mars is exceedingly thin.
I'm aware of that.
To give you an example of that. Yes, well, it's on Earth here, typically the atmospheric pressure at ground level is about 14.7 pounds per square inch.
Correct.
Mike, on Mars, that PSI, that pressure level, is 0.088 PSI.
Yes.
Now that's 1/600th the density of the atmosphere of Earth. So it's roughly equivalent. Now I just don't understand how a drone can be made to fly in an atmosphere that thin. That atmosphere is so thin that it's equivalent to the Earth's atmosphere at 22 miles of altitude. And we know we can't fly a drone at 22 miles altitude on Earth. So how is it possible to fly a drone on Mars? I'm very, very suspicious of that.
Well, because they design it to fly in that thin atmosphere. If you actually have looked at photos of the drone, it's got a very large rotor, which I imagine is traveling at a very high rate of speed. But if you really think about all the aircraft here on Earth which do fly very high in the atmosphere, you'll understand it is possible if they are engineered for that.
Well, I don't know. It occurs to me that a drone, in order to fly on Mars, would have to have rotor blades a half a mile long.
No, they just have to be going very, very fast. That may be the reason. That may be the reason it took so long to charge the batteries.
Yeah. Well,
we're going to see. I mean, you know, I know they've been working on the idea of a Martian aircraft going all the way back to Viking. They actually were looking at a fixed wing design at first, where the entire fuselage and wings were simply inflatable, and it would pop out, and they would, you know, have this little canister of gas that would vent out there and just blow the thing up like one of those Macy's Thanksgiving Day balloons, and it would have a very powerful little prop engine to get it into the air. But I think the drone idea is going to work a little bit better, and we're definitely going to see that. But you know, like I said, we'll see. Maybe the drone was designed by some of those people who think mathematics is racist.
Could be. That's a funny joke. Well, I'll tell you what, Mike, I'm going to remain skeptical for the meantime until I see some good footage of that thing flying from Mars. And in the meantime, thank you for taking my call.
You've got it. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to go to Don in Arizona. Hello, Don. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Mike, you were talking about the cars, electric cars.
Yes.
I still think that the hydrogen fuel cell is a better option, but they're not. The electric, just the electric battery cars are being subsidized by the government.
Yes.
They get more money out of it. The fuel cells, hydrogen fuel cells. You just use the existing gas stations to sell hydrogen.
Well, no, that would take an extensive retooling. You know, even more than it would be to simply put in a charging station. Because the hydrogen especially is going to be very difficult to contain. It's got to be kept under pressure, unlike gasoline. And, you know, it's certainly feasible. The big question is where you're going to get all the hydrogen to begin with in a cost-effective manner. Now, when they finally get a handle on fusion power, then they can put fusion reactors out on the abandoned oil rigs in the ocean, suck up the seawater, split it into hydrogen and oxygen, let the oxygen go into the atmosphere, and then they've got the hydrogen to power anything that's going to run on a fuel cell.
Well, thankfully, I'll be dead pretty soon, so I won't have to worry about all this anyway. You know, I got probably my last car right now, my gasoline car, so I don't have to really worry about it. But I think that I always thought the first time I ever called you, Mike, I'm sure you don't remember, but the first time I called you, because I was thinking, this guy's smart, he knows everything. And so I asked you about the price of platinum. What's going to happen to the price of platinum? And you didn't seem to have that knowledge. That's one thing. The only thing you didn't know.
I will admit to those things I don't know, but obviously with catalytic converters, the price of platinum has gone way up. That's why that guy was trying to steal that catalytic converter, you know, the guy who got crushed in Anaheim.
Well, yeah, that's been around for a long time. They can use palladium or platinum on that.
Yes.
Actually, they're using palladium. That's why the price of palladium right now is double platinum, which makes no sense from a scarcity standpoint. Platinum is more, it's more expensive to mine. It's more difficult to mine, and it's the scarcest of all the precious metals. But as it is right now, palladium, the Russians, I've always heard the Russians somehow control the price of palladium because they produce most of it, and they somehow they bump up the price of but anyway, hydrogen fuel cells would have to use either one. They have to use catalysts too. They'd have to use a lot of either platinum or palladium.
Yeah, but at least it's a known technology. I mean, they were using those on the Apollo missions.
Right. There is such a thing as. But anyway, I just happened to remember that was the first thing I asked you about platinum. Right. Well, I don't know what's going to happen next, but yeah, I mean, gasoline cars. The good thing about the hydrogen fuel cell, the electric cars have a lot of bugs. They don't work well in real cold weather.
No, they don't.
Electric battery cars, and you got all the batteries are huge. Yeah, they need batteries too for the fuel cell, but it's not as big. So these electric cars are you're going to have all that toxic waste. Well, luckily, like I said, I'll be dead pretty soon, so I won't have to worry about it. But,
well, that's kind of a negative attitude. Me, I want to see all this stuff happen.
Yeah, well, I might see it. But,
well, good. I hope you do. I really hope you do. Anyway, Don, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to. You got one more thing?
Right, go ahead. When you get so old, all you can do is look. So I mean, you might as well.
Well, I'm going through that myself. I can't do the things I used to do. I can't work in aerospace. I can't work in the movie business anymore. All I can do is talk radio.
You got blackballed, Mike. Blackballed. Okay, you take it easy. Thanks.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Phone lines are open, 512-248-8252. We're going to go to Kelly in Austin. Hello, Kelly. Welcome to the show. What is on your mind?
Okay, about platinum and palladium. Those are base metals.
Yes.
They're really found in high concentrations in very few areas of the world. Typically South Africa. South Africa's mined them for a long time.
Yes.
You find them elsewhere, Russia and Canada. But they just don't exist in the concentrations needed to make high quality ore deposits around the world. And so, few places in the world really control that. And really, if you're going to invest in something, well, you should think something has a long-term potential for value as a metal deposit. Platinum, palladium, those metals, osmium, rhenium, those metals in that same metal group on the periodic table.
Yes.
All really have the same potential. So you want to look at that. Now about this thing in Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah.
I've noticed that the media are bending over backwards, crawling up their rear ends. They start over from the beginning to do that, trying to blame this on Whitey.
Yeah.
I heard mentioned white nationalists. It has backfired on them. And there's no way they can get around it, except they're still trying to find some way to blame this on Whitey. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
And I mean, if people are watching us, they're going to have to start thinking, what is your agenda? Why are you trying to blame white men for every damn thing that ever happens in this world? When you've got, a Muslim that does this, a Muslim that does that, and this, that, and the other, and you're still trying to point your finger at Whitey, at white nationalists. This has got to backfire against these people quickly.
Yeah.
And when you have somebody with a name, with an obviously Muslim name who has ties to Syria and ISIS, good Lord. How the hell can you continue to tap dance and do whatever you can to try to claim that Whitey has something to do with this? I can't help thinking that people who are alert, I don't mean awake, but alert,
yes,
will look at this and think that the media really have an overt anti-white agenda, and this is going to do nothing more than stoke more racial hatred. And it might wake up more white people to realize that you cannot trust these people. They've got to wake up, and they've got to start fighting back.
Yes.
Good Lord. Okay, well, I mean, I've said what I have to say about that, Mike. Let me go back to the metals issue.
Okay.
They're called platinum group metals.
Yes.
On the periodic table. There's 6 of them. And if you can invest in any of those, I mean, do so, because they have abundant uses. But the fact is that that they are rare, and the value of those metals will continue to appreciate long term, especially things like platinum, since platinum is used in things like catalytic converters. But you have osmium, rhenium, ruthenium, and other metals in that group. They're very valuable metals.
Yes, they are.
If I had a bundle of money right now to put into platinum, I would. I've got it invested in other things, but those are very important metals. You can't ignore them. Okay, Mike, thanks much. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much for the phone call. The phone lines are now completely open. Area code 512-248-8252, and we're already getting word from Israel of claims of fraud regarding the election which started today. And they're already saying Israel's election is going to look a lot like America's, which I think we've just been insulted. So they're saying it may not even be Friday before we get the results. There's even a fear of insurrection if the election is in fact crooked, as it were. So let's see. Moving on down here. Apparently, Amazon is hiring former FBI agents for its security operations, and nobody really understands exactly why. But we do know there's been a lot of union busting going on with Amazon. They're trying to prevent the employees from unionizing and striking for better base. This one is a little disturbing, and I saw it come through. Over on Okinawa, the U.S. is expanding, well, they're building a new air base, and they're getting ready to basically abandon, I think the old one is Kadena. And it turns out that the soil being used to build the new U.S. air base contains the remains of American, Korean, and Japanese soldiers among the more than 200,000 killed during a 1945 battle on that island. So much for respecting the war dead. Almost a third of Americans say they'll avoid the coronavirus vaccine. We've already talked about that one for a while. Republicans are out there opposing the granting of statehood to the District of Columbia, and they're saying the reason it shouldn't be granted statehood is because it doesn't have land to fill, which I don't think means anything, an airport, or even a car dealership. All right, we're going to go back to the phones here to James in Vancouver. Hello, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, how you doing? Happy Tuesday, is it? Monday, Tuesday.
Yes.
I tuned in late. Sorry, did anyone mention cold fusion?
We didn't, but we've talked about it in the past, and I know that the U.S. Army lab is still playing around with it.
Yeah, I wrote a paper in that a couple of years back, and I published it on the internet. And in I think it was 2019, I called up the company. I won't mention the name, but they have deuterium. See, and I asked if they could quote me a price, and the guy kind of said, "Well, hey, there's a lot of paperwork on this."
Yeah, I can imagine that would be the case.
Yeah. So that was like on a Friday, and he says, "You're going to have to talk to the salesman. I'll get him to call you back on Monday." And so this guy called me up and said, "There's no way we're going to sell you this." And I said, "Oh, okay, well, thank you." And then that was it. But deuterium, you see, has got special properties quantum mechanically, which allow it to easily fuse.
Yes, so does tritium.
Yeah, that could be, but the spin of tritium, I think, is different than deuterium.
Okay.
I think the spin of tritium is an integral number of a half, and that makes it difficult. But if it has 0 or 1 spin, then it will tend to want to fuse, regardless of the charge that's regardless of the charge on the proton.
Okay.
So anyway, there's my contribution for today.
Well, it seemed like Fleischmann and Pons had come up with something that was very exciting, and all of a sudden it went away. And like I said, the Army lab is still playing with it, so they may have just decided that kind of a compact power supply was not something the American people should know exists or have access to. So
yeah, and Pons and Fleischmann used palladium, I remember.
Well, palladium was being used as the anode, I believe. And the people who tried to duplicate the experiment, they may not have used deuterium. They may have just used regular hydrogen, which is going to take a lot more energy to fuse.
But the key point about the palladium is the deuterium can absorb into the surface of the palladium.
Yes.
That's the key point. So,
which is why you can't machine it. You've got to electropolish it.
Yeah, I would believe that.
Yeah.
Right. I believe that. How's everything? How's everything else? Your situation. Oh, there's the music.
Yeah, there's the music. I got to let you go. We got another caller waiting for the last segment of our program. We'll be right back. Before we get back to the phones here, the Daily Mail is just now running a story on how the Boulder shooter, Ahmed Alissa, was known to the FBI. So, curiouser and curiouser. Okay, we're going to go to the phones here to Kelly in Austin. Hello, Kelly. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I forgot to mention a couple of things. One, about Angela Merkel. Angela Merkel in Germany is known as Mutti, which is a slang term for mom.
Yes.
And it's a derisive term, actually, for her. She has a doctorate in physics from an East German university, and the fact is that woman is a tyrant.
Yes.
Auf Deutsch, sie ist eine Tyrannin. She's a tyrant.
Yeah.
And she's trying to crack down on Germans now, and they are going to explode because of what she's trying to do now.
I agree.
The last thing I want to say is that I heard your last caller comment about deuterium and tritium. Look, deuterium and tritium are both naturally occurring in isotopes of hydrogen.
Yes.
Deuterium has a proton and a neutron, and tritium has a proton and two neutrons. All right. Deuterium is typically used to mediate or slow down nuclear reactions in reactors to keep these things from running out of control. And they use that in nuclear bombs.
Yes,
to keep
they do.
Nuclear bombs from running out of control. And then tritium is typically used as a booster.
Yes.
Was used as a booster in nuclear bombs.
Yes.
To jack up the rate of reaction there. But that's also naturally occurring.
Yeah,
so,
but refining
both produced in laboratories.
Refining it takes massive centrifuges and so forth. That's what they used to call a heavy water plant.
Well, yeah, and that's the truth. But the point is, it takes a lot of energy to produce those things.
Yes, it does.
You know, and so if you take the rate of the level of deuterium in the atmosphere, that's very, very low, or natural water, it's very, very low, and so it takes a lot of energy.
Yes, it does.
Jack it up to the point at which you have enough deuterium to mediate reactions.
Well, that's why tritium is so expensive, which is used in gun sights and, self-illuminated watches, but it's very, very expensive. Anyway, Kelly, I need to let you go. We've got one more caller. I want to get to Laura in Michigan. Hello, Laura. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I just want to give a message to all the chronic callers. Always wonder why the whites are getting blamed for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, you got to go to davidduke.com and free download his book, My Awakening.
Okay.
And you'll understand. You listen to that book, and you find out it's not the whites against the blacks or whatever. It's the Jews against the Gentiles. That's where the war is.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. Not religious, but DNA. We'll go DNA. I know you don't like religious stuff.
Well,
that's the Jews against the Gentiles.
It's not a case of not liking it. Just continue what you're saying. But we got to hurry. We're almost out of time.
But you'll find the truth. I'll go to davidduke.com and download his My Awakening book, audio book.
All right. Well, Laura, we got to let you go. We're at the end of the show. Thank you very much here. Stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.